Most people look at the golden arches and see a happy meal. They see childhood birthdays. They see road trips with their parents. They see a smiling clown and a friendly red-haired mascot and a warm, fuzzy feeling of American nostalgia. I look at them and see a tombstone. I see a monument to greed, a shrine to theft, and a graveyard where two brothers' dreams were buried alive. We have been fed this disgusting, saccharine American dream story about Ray Kroc for decades. The 52-year-old milkshake machine salesman who never gave up. The late bloomer who finally found his calling. The visionary who turned a small burger stand into a global empire. Let me stop you right there. That story is a lie. It is a carefully constructed piece of corporate propaganda designed to make you feel warm and fuzzy while you stuff your face with processed meat. Ray Kroc did not build McDonald's. He parasitized it. He found two brilliant, naive, trusting brothers who had created the most efficient restaurant operation the world had ever seen. He smiled at them. He shook their hands. He promised to protect their vision. And then he sucked their brains dry, stole their system, and used the legal system to kick them into the dirt until they had nothing left. Not their restaurant. Not their name. Not their dignity. Nothing. Today, we are peeling back the greasy, blood-soaked wrapper to reveal the most cold-blooded heist in the history of American business. This is not a success story. This is a manual on how to steal a masterpiece and erase its creators from history. If you love McDonald's, you are about to hate yourself for it. Let me paint you a picture of Ray Kroc before he became the face of the Golden Arches. He was not a visionary. He was not a genius. He was a desperate, middle-aged loser. By the time he was 52 years old, Ray Kroc had failed at almost everything he had ever touched. He had been a paper cup salesman. He had been a real estate agent during the Great Depression, which was like being an ice salesman in the Arctic. He had been a jazz pianist in a seedy bar. He had tried to sell everything from milkshake mixers to Florida swampland. Nothing worked. Nothing stuck. He was a man running out of time, running out of money, and running out of excuses. He was hawking multi-mixers, those 5-spindle milkshake machines, to dying roadside stands that were barely staying in business. He was living out of his car, eating in diners, sleeping in cheap motels, and watching his life slip away. Then he got a phone call that changed everything. A small burger stand in San Bernardino, California, had ordered 8 of his multi-mixers. 8. That was insane. Most restaurants ordered 1, maybe 2 if they were busy. 8 meant they were selling an impossible number of milkshakes. Kroc drove across the country to see this place with his own eyes. What he found was the McDonald Brothers hamburger stand, and it was like nothing he had ever seen. The lines stretched around the block. The service was lightning fast. The food was cheap, and the whole operation was run by 2 brothers who had invented something extraordinary. A production line for hamburgers. They called it the speedy service system. No waiters. No plates. No forks. No spoons. Customers walked up to a window, ordered from a limited menu, and got their food in under 30 seconds. It was perfect. It was a machine. And in that moment, Ray Kroc did not see the future of food. He did not see a partnership. He did not see 2 brilliant men who deserved recognition and respect. He saw prey. Here is the dark logic that separates predators from prey. Kroc realized immediately that the McDonald brothers were sheep. They were nice. They were honest. They cared about quality. They cared about their local community. They cared about their employees. They cared about their family name. In the eyes of a predator like Ray Kroc, those are not virtues. Those are vulnerabilities. Those are weaknesses to be exploited. The brothers had created a gold mine, but they were too small-minded to exploit it. They did not want to expand. They did not want a franchise. They were happy with their one perfect little restaurant. They were happy with their modest income. They were happy with their quiet lives. Kroc looked at their happiness and saw nothing but wasted potential. As he watched them work, he didn't see the future of food. He saw a gold mine being guarded by children. He wasn't there to partner. He was there to colonize. Kroc approached the brothers with a smile and a proposal. Let me franchise your system. Let me take your speedy service system to the rest of America. I will build hundreds of restaurants. I will spread your name across the country. The brothers, naive and trusting, agreed. They signed a deal that made Ray Kroc the exclusive franchising agent for McDonald's. On paper, it seemed safe. The brothers retained control over every aspect of the operation. They could veto any change to the menu. They could veto any change to the ingredients. They could veto any change to the cooking process. They thought they had protected their legacy. What they did not realize was that they had just invited a vampire into their home. They had handed Kroc the keys to their castle and trusted him not to steal the silverware. Kroc started opening McDonald's franchises across the country. Quickly, he discovered a problem. The deal he had signed was terrible for him. The brothers took a tiny percentage of every sale. Kroc took an even tinier percentage. He was doing all the work. He was traveling constantly. He was managing franchisees. He was dealing with suppliers. He was fighting with health inspectors and local politicians. And he was making pennies. Pennies. The brothers, sitting in San Bernardino, were making more money than he was. They were happy. He was furious. He grew to hate them with a burning, all-consuming rage. Every time they refused to let him cheapen the ingredients, his rage built. Every time they refused to let him use powdered milk instead of fresh, his rage built. Every time they insisted on quality over profit, his rage built. They were holding him back. They were standing in the way of his destiny. They had to go. This is the moment where most business stories would preach about ethics and integrity. Let me be clear about something. Those are the lies that poor people tell themselves to feel better about staying poor. The McDonald brothers were right about everything. The quality was better. The food was better. The customer experience was better. And they still lost. They still lost everything. Because being right does not matter in business if you do not have the leverage. Kroc realized that the contract was just a piece of paper. He could sign 1,000,000 contracts, but if he did not control the land, the buildings, the real assets, he was just a sharecropper. He needed a weapon. He found it in a man named Harry Sonneborn. Before I show you the dirty trick Kroc used to bypass the brothers' control entirely, tell me in the comments. Is business ethics just a fancy word for giving your competitors a head start? Or is there a way to win without becoming the villain? I want to hear your answer. Harry Sonneborn was a financier. He looked at money the way Kroc looked at hamburgers, as something to be consumed and controlled. Sonneborn pulled Kroc aside one day and said something that changed the course of fast food history forever. He said, "Ray, you are not in the burger business. You are in the real estate business." That single sentence was the darkest insight in the history of the industry. Kroc had been thinking like a salesman. He thought success came from selling more burgers. Sonneborn taught him to think like a predator. Success comes from owning the ground those burgers are sold on. Here's how it worked. Kroc started a separate company, a real estate company. This new company would buy the land under every new McDonald's franchise. Then Kroc would lease that land back to the franchisees. The franchisees paid rent. The rent was set just high enough to cover the mortgage and generate a profit. But here is the evil genius of the plan. Kroc did not need the brothers' permission for any of this. The real estate company was his. The leases were his. The land was his. He was no longer a franchising agent. He was a landlord. And landlords have power that franchising agents can only dream about. If a franchisee refused to follow his orders, he could threaten to evict them. If the brothers refused to let him change the menu, he could threaten to evict their franchisees. He did not need their permission anymore. He did not need their approval. He did not need their signature on anything. He held the keys to the land, while the brothers held a useless piece of paper that said they owned the name McDonald's. Kroc had effectively built a shadow government inside the company. He controlled the real estate. He controlled the franchisees. He controlled the supply chain. He controlled everything that mattered. The brothers thought they were the kings of McDonald's. They were wrong. They were just figureheads. They were mascots. They were ghosts who had not realized they were dead yet. This is how the top 1% actually builds wealth. Not by working harder. Not by being smarter. Not by having better ideas. By controlling the ground you stand on. By owning the land, the building, the capital, the leverage. They let you keep the scraps while they take the feast. Hit subscribe if you want to stop being the one paying rent and start being the one collecting it. Because the only difference between Ray Kroc and the rest of us is that he understood one simple truth. Ownership is everything. By 1961, Kroc had had enough. He could not stand the brothers anymore. He could not stand their insistence on quality. He could not stand their refusal to let him cheapen the food. He could not stand their naive belief that a handshake meant something. He wanted them gone. Completely. Permanently. Erased. The brothers, exhausted by decades of fighting, finally agreed to sell. They asked for $2.7 million. $1.3 million for each brother after taxes. It was a fortune. To them, it was unimaginable wealth. To Kroc, it was a bargain. He still hated every cent of it. He still resented that he had to pay them anything at all. But he paid. He borrowed the money from a group of investors. He signed the papers. He became the sole owner of the McDonald's name. But here is the knife in the back. The brothers claimed that Kroc made them a promise. A handshake deal. In addition to the $2.7 million, he promised them a perpetual royalty of 0.5% of McDonald's gross revenues. Forever. It would have made their families wealthy for generations. Kroc told them he could not put it in the written contract because the investors would not approve. But his word was his bond. His handshake was his honor. The brothers, naive to the end, believed him. They signed the contract without the royalty clause. They trusted the man who had already shown them exactly who he was. Once the ink was dry on the buyout, Kroc looked them in the eye and essentially said, "Prove it. Sue me. Show me a contract with my signature on it. Show me a witness who saw me make that promise. Show me anything that will hold up in court." They could not. There was nothing. Just a memory. Just a feeling. Just the naive belief that a handshake still meant something in the world of business. Kroc never paid a single dime of that royalty. Not 1 cent. That handshake, that broken promise, that act of pure, calculated evil, cost the McDonald family an estimated $100 million a year in today's money. He did not just take their company. He took their legacy. He took their bloodline's future wealth. He took the inheritance that should have gone to their children and their children's children. He took everything. Most billionaires would have stopped there. They would have taken the company, made their fortune, and let the brothers fade quietly into history. But Ray Kroc was not most billionaires. He was not just greedy. He was petty. He was small. He was vindictive. He wanted to watch them suffer. When he bought the name McDonald's, the brothers had kept one thing: their original restaurant. The very first McDonald's. The birthplace of the speedy service system. Kroc could have let them keep it. It was nothing to him. A single restaurant in San Bernardino. A relic. A museum. But he could not stand the idea of them having anything. He forced them to remove their own name from their own restaurant. They could not call it McDonald's anymore. They renamed it the Big M. They painted over the golden arches. They erased their own history. And then Kroc opened a brand new, shiny, state-of-the-art McDonald's directly across the street from the Big M. He did not need to. There was no business reason. There was no strategic advantage. He did it out of pure, unadulterated spite. He wanted to watch them go bankrupt. He wanted to see the look on their faces when customers drove past their sad little renamed restaurant and lined up at the shiny new McDonald's. He wanted to kill them slowly. He succeeded. The Big M could not compete. The brothers watched as their life's work was cannibalized by the company they had created. They went bankrupt. They lost everything. They died in obscurity. The original McDonald's location was eventually torn down. There is nothing there now. No plaque. No museum. No acknowledgement. Just an empty lot and a memory that has been deliberately, systematically erased. Kroc spent the rest of his life rewriting history. He called himself the founder. He put his name on every biography. He gave interviews where he talked about his vision and his persistence. He never mentioned the brothers. He never mentioned the speedy service system. He never mentioned the handshake. He just smiled his greasy smile and collected his billions. He did not just steal their store. He stole their place in history. He stole their story. He stole their legacy. And the world let him. Ray Kroc died a billionaire in 1984. He had a net worth of over $600 million. His funeral was attended by the rich and powerful. His name is etched into the history books as a visionary. The McDonald brothers died broke. Their original restaurant is a forgotten footnote. Their names are barely mentioned in the official corporate history. Their children and grandchildren received nothing. They were erased. This is the part of the story they do not teach you in business school. This is the part they leave out of the motivational speeches. The lesson here is not about persistence. It is not about hard work. It is not about following your dreams. Those are the lies they tell the workers, so they keep flipping the burgers and smiling at the customers and showing up on time for their minimum wage shifts. The real lesson is this. In a capitalist jungle, the person who invents the product is rarely the person who gets rich off it. The money goes to the person who owns the contract, the land, the supply chain, the legal team, the ruthless willingness to screw over their friends and smile while doing it. The McDonald brothers were brilliant. They created the most efficient restaurant system in history. They were also decent, honest, trusting people. And those qualities, in the world of business, are not strengths. They are death sentences. If you want to be a creator, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be an inventor, stay small. Stay local. Stay happy. Do not invite the wolves into your home. But if you want to build an empire, if you want to be a titan, if you want to leave your mark on the world, you have to be willing to be the monster in someone else's story. You have to be willing to break handshake deals. You have to be willing to erase the people who helped you. You have to be willing to look at yourself in the mirror and accept that you are not the hero. You are the villain. You can hate Ray Kroc all you want. You can curse his name. You can boycott McDonald's. You can write angry comments. But while you are hating him, his system is still taking your money every single day. His system is still feeding your children processed meat and frozen potatoes. His system is still plastered across every highway in every country on earth. The founder was a thief. He was a liar. He was a predator. But he was a thief who understood the rules of the game better than the people who wrote the book. The McDonald brothers wrote the recipe. Ray Kroc wrote the contract. And in business, the contract always wins. This is AutoArchives. We do not do fairy tales. We do not do feel-good stories. We do not do inspirational speeches. We do the truth. The ugly, bloody, uncomfortable truth that the corporate propaganda machine does not want you to see. Leave a hamburger emoji in the comments if you are never looking at a Big Mac the same way again. And subscribe, because next time, we are taking down another sacred cow.